time, we trace the sad saga of rock's royal family. We share the sadness of a matinee idol, the misery of an exiled icon, and delve into the past and present pain behind the disco dancer's smile. London-born but raised in Australia, Pete Andre got his lucky break when Australian music mogul and TV presenter Ian Molly Meldrum signed him up after he appeared on the Australian television talent show New Faces in 1990. He went on to have a run of hit records in the UK and Australia, including a #1 album, Natural, which hit the top spot in both countries in 1996. But then his career lost momentum, and his 1997 album, Time, fell well short of expectations when it only reached number 28 on the UK charts. Less determined men may have taken this as a sign their 15 minutes were up and given the game away. But not Peter, who in 2004 joined the reality TV show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and stood out for relentlessly flirting with British model Katie Price, also known as Jordan, while snagging third place in the final rankings. The couple married in September the following year and have since had 3 children together. But in April 2007, it all threatened to come crashing down for Peter again when he was hospitalized with meningitis. He was forced to issue a statement to counteract internet rumors that he had in fact died before being released from hospital in May. Multi-Grammy Award winner Sheryl Crow is no stranger to pain. In fact, even as her star was rising in the mid-1990s, tragedy was descending upon her private life. While she was basking in the glory of her breakthrough debut album, many of the collaborators on the Tuesday Night Music Club were dishing the dirt on her behind the scenes. Ex-boyfriend Kevin Gilbert, who had introduced her to his circle of musicians and written many of the songs on the album, was said to be deeply hurt by the lack of credit he received. Sheryl didn't help matters when she appeared on the David Letterman show and claimed that one of the hit songs, Leaving Las Vegas, was autobiographical. In fact, the song had been mostly written by band member David Bearwald, based on the book by his good friend John O'Brien. O'Brien died just days after the Letterman interview. Despite the fact that his family came forward to assert that Sheryl's claim on Letterman had nothing to do with the self-confessed alcoholic's death, Sheryl copped the blame. 2 years later, Kevin Gilbert was found hanged. Many of his friends attributed his apparent suicide to Sheryl's failure to acknowledge his contribution on her debut album, despite stepping up to the podium to accept 3 Grammy Awards shortly before his death. Her love life has also endured some major challenges. She's had short-lived romances with a number of fellow creatives, such as Eric Clapton and Owen Wilson. The closest she came to marriage was with champion cyclist Lance Armstrong. The pair announced they were about to tie the knot in September 2005, but the engagement was broken off before she made it down the aisle. Sheryl has publicly admitted to suffering from depression and was quoted as saying that she has thought about suicide. Her will to live was put to the test in February 2006 when she was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. The treatment was successful and the prognosis is good, but going through such an ordeal changed Sheryl's life.
It's really made me look at my life much differently, and even in small ways, just not sweating the small stuff, as they say. And it may sound kind of cliche, but it really does make you I think readjust your thinking about life when something like this happens. And it was, you know, it's not something I would want for everybody to go through, but for me, it really changed my life in positive ways.
In the year 2000, the German-American entertainers Siegfried and Roy were listed as the 9th highest paid celebrities in America, coming just behind Steven Spielberg. They met on a cruise ship in 1959, when Roy Horn was a waiter and Siegfried Fischbacher was a cabin steward. Roy had grown up around wild animals, and when he and Siegfried decided to work on a magic and illusion act together, animals quickly became part of the show. They soon developed a devoted following for their glamorous and exotic performances, And in 1972, their show received the Las Vegas Entertainment Award for Best Show Act of the Year. By 1990, the money was rolling in as they signed a contract with the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas, which guaranteed them $57.5 million a year. 10 years later, they re-signed with the hotel, and this time it was a lifetime contract. In over 3 decades in Las Vegas, they were seen by around 25 million people. But on the 3rd of October 2003, a terrifying accident saw the curtains come down on the act when a 7-year-old tiger named Montecore nearly killed Roy during a live show at the Mirage. A puncture wound in his shoulder caused a severe loss of blood, leading to a stroke and some paralysis. A quarter of his leg had to be removed, and he was eventually transferred to the UCLA Medical Center for rehabilitation.
He's fighting for his life, and he's cognizant of the fact that he's in a circumstance whereby every second of every minute of every hour of every day that passes is to our benefit, and brings us closer to survival and then ultimately recovery.
When talking about the accident later, both Siegfried and Roy defended Montecore, saying that he'd been distracted by an audience member with big hair who tried to pat him. As Roy attempted to get between the tiger and the woman, he slipped and Montecore picked him up to take him off stage. If the tiger had wanted to hurt him, the duo said, he would have shaken him and broken his neck. Montecore was simply trying to carry him to safety, as he would a cub. In 2006, the couple celebrated Roy's recovery with a star on the Las Vegas Walk of Fame. Coming up, the Osbournes. All the black fingernails, heavy eyeliner, tattoos, and devil worship in the world can't cover up the fact that Ozzy Osbourne is an old softie who's had a hard time growing up. Born John Michael Osbourne in Birmingham in 1948, he was one of 6 children brought up in abject poverty. He suffered from learning difficulties, which led to him being bullied at school. As a teenager, he began showing signs of clinical depression and sought comfort in music. Dubbed the Prince of Darkness, his songwriting skills and crazy stage antics helped turn Black Sabbath into one of the most popular heavy metal bands of the decade. During the mid-70s, Ozzy allegedly took LSD every day for 2 years, leading to him being thrown out of the band in 1979 for being unreliable. The downward spiral continued with his divorce from his first wife, Thelma Riley, with whom he had 2 children. By the time he'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, the rocker had hit rock bottom. His white knight arrived in the shape of his former manager's daughter, Sharon Arden, who picked him up, dusted him off, married him, and helped him into solo success in the 80s. But that didn't spell the end of Ozzy's addictions. As his abuse of heroin, cocaine, and alcohol continued, he frequently beat Sharon. Although Sharon claims she always gave as good as she got, one of Ozzy's attacks on her in 1989 landed him in a prison cell on a charge of attempted murder. But the final straw came when Ozzy went on a killing spree, slaughtering all 17 of the couple's cats. Sharon found him cowering under the piano, clutching a shotgun and a knife. Sharon finally got him back onto the relatively straight and narrow and gave Ozzy the opportunity to endear himself to millions of television viewers by shuffling and mumbling his way through the hit reality show about his family life. The success of the Osbournes prompted the Hollywood Walk of Fame into action, and Ozzy got a gold star.
I gotta tell you guys, I was absolutely, totally surprised by this one. But I gotta get rid of the thanks. I'd like to thank Johnny Grant, Marilyn Manson, Robbie Williams, Epic Records, my family and friends, and last but not least, you fans, guys. to say this is an honour is not enough, you know. I'm just so overwhelmed with you guys turning out so early in the morning to see my old Bert. And once again, thank you very, very much. Thank you. I love you all.
Perhaps the excitement was a little too much. In December 2003, he was herring around on a quad bike when he came a cropper and had to be rushed to hospital. Sharon rushed to his bedside and helped him convalesce at their Buckinghamshire estate. Within a year, rotten luck struck again when he came face to face with two burglars.
At the time when I had to go to the asylum, as I said earlier on, I acted purely on insult. On hindsight, I thought it could have been a lot worse. I could have been like George Harrison. I could have been badly injured or anything. Could have shot or anything. I'm unhappy in one respect, but happy in the next that it could have got really ugly. And I just thank God that no one got injured. Really.
The burglars made off with a swag bag of jewellery and other prized possessions. And despite being one of UK's richest couples, Ozzy and Sharon weren't taking it lying down, offering a £100,000 reward to catch the crooks.
You know, I'm sure a lot of people will look at us and say, well, you know, they've got more, they can buy it again. There's more serious things that are happening in the world, you know, who really gives a damn? But the thing is, you know, we worked for everything. I came from Brixton. Ozzy came from, you know, not a very nice part of Birmingham, and everything we've got, we have worked our asses off for. And if I choose to make an investment for my kids in whatever way I choose to make it, that's my business. And I worked for every goddamn penny. And when somebody comes who hasn't worked and wants to take what's yours, you know, it pisses me off big time.
The Prince of Darkness's feisty wife was taking no prisoners. But then, like Ozzy, she'd also just come through a very trying time health-wise. In July 2002, she had been diagnosed with colon cancer. Despite the diagnosis, she insisted the cameras keep rolling on the Osbournes' reality show and later revealed that the cancer had spread to her lymph nodes. She had surgery to remove a portion of her intestines and then underwent 3 months of chemotherapy. Although she pulled through with only a 33% survival prognosis, her illness had a profound effect on her family. Not only did Ozzy confess to falling apart during her recovery, their son Jack allegedly tried to commit suicide by imbibing a cocktail of absinthe, heroin, sleeping pills, and a can of WD-40. Not long before that, the troubled 14-year-old checked himself into a children's psychiatric ward in an attempt to beat his addictions to alcohol, pot, and OxyContin. Compared to the trials and tribulations undergone by the rest of the family, Kelly Osbourne seems to have got off rather lightly so far. Apart from rating regular inclusion on the Blackwell's worst dressed list, she seems to have had no major issues. Except for her inexplicable aversion to Christina Aguilera, who became the victim of merciless mocking on the Osbournes. However, she did manage to bring her mother to tears at her premiere performance in the London stage version of the musical Chicago.
She's going to do this role.
Pardon?
What do you think about her doing this role?
I think it's fantastic. Whatever she does, I'm behind, as long as it's not illegal.
Any chance of you doing a musical?
After the show, she was smiling again. In full remission, Sharon is now back in control of her brood. Jack is off the drugs, and Ozzy has also been keeping his nose clean. One great thing that came out of Sharon's brush with death was the foundation of her cancer charity. And it didn't take her long to rope Ozzy into helping the cause.
And what could be better than to have an Aussie stickman on the back of a shirt? And what could be better than Ozzy? I didn't make him. He decided that the money for the shirt would go to my colon cancer charity. And I have the Sharon Osbourne Colon Cancer Program in association with Cedars Cyanide.
Sharon has said in an interview that having cancer was one of the best things that has happened to her, and that it's completely changed her attitude to life. And these days she's ploughing more of her efforts into helping others than into adding to the Osbourne fortune. One of the causes that benefited from Sharon's newfound humanitarianism was the bid to raise money for victims of the Indian Ocean disaster. Having transformed a devil-worshipping shipwreck into a family-friendly cash cow, putting together the multi-million-pound Tears in Heaven project must have been a walk in the park.
My family and I are really hoping to go and see where the money's being spent. We hope to raise enough to build a couple of orphanages, and we hope to go and see it through till the orphanages are completed and built, and we'll fill it full of music for them and not tears.
Coming up, Cary Grant. Though his only Oscar was an honorary one in 1970, Cary Grant still enjoyed one of the brightest and most consistently successful Hollywood careers of all time. Hugely popular and talented, he was urbane, witty, devilishly charming, and could play in anything from screwball comedies to dark thrillers. Though he never, ever played the villain. Born Archibald Leach in Bristol in England 1904, Cary moved to the US with a performing troupe when he was just 16. After finding his feet in Broadway comedies, he made his way to Hollywood, where he was discovered by Mae West and catapulted to fame. His resume includes some of the greatest classics of the silver screen, made by such legendary directors as Howard Hawks, Alfred Hitchcock, and Frank Capra. She Done Him Wrong, The Awful Truth, Bringing Up Baby, The Philadelphia Story, Notorious, North by Northwest, Arsenic and Old Lace, The Front Page, An Affair to Remember. The list goes on and on. As a leading man, he was easily convincing, opposite everyone from Marlene Dietrich in 1932's Blonde Venus, right up to Audrey Hepburn in 1963's Charade, despite his reservations about the 25-year age gap between them. But off-screen, his success with the opposite sex was more complicated. Perhaps his 5 marriages and many love affairs could be traced back to his relationship with his mother, who was institutionalized when Cary was just 9 years old, unable to overcome the depression caused by the death of another child. Cary was told she had gone on a long holiday and didn't find out she was still alive and still in the mental home until he was in his 30s. At least 2 of Cary's marriages ended with accusations of physical abuse against Cary. Both his first wife, Virginia Sherrill, and his 4th, Diane Cannon, claimed he hit them. And throughout his life, rumors circulated about his sexuality, particularly because of his relationship with fellow actor Randolph Scott, with whom he shared a home for many years, though Cary always denied he was gay. His 3rd marriage to Betsy Drake was his longest, lasting just shy of 13 years. During the marriage, he discovered LSD, which was legal at the time and greatly appreciated by Cary, who claimed it brought him the serenity hypnosis and yoga had failed to do. Perhaps it also relieved him of the need for public adoration, for it was also in the 60s that Cary Grant retired from the screen, making his final film in 1966. He died following a stroke in 1986 at the age of 82. The legendary lovely Marlena, as she was once famously introduced by Noel Coward, was one of the 20th century's greatest stars. With a sure self-knowledge and a genius for reinvention, she managed to have a successful career for 60 years. Starting with film stardom in Germany and winding up a cabaret and concert star, she performed right up until the mid-70s when she broke a leg during an Australian show, which more or less ended her performing career. She first captured the world's attention in her breakthrough role as Lola Lola in 1929's The Blue Angel, singing the song with which she would become most often identified, Falling in Love Again, and breaking the heart of a love-struck teacher played by Emil Jannings. With Joseph von Sternberg, the director of the film, Marlene left her native Germany and travelled to Hollywood, where Paramount Studios were eagerly awaiting their own exotic European, as an answer to MGM's Greta Garbo. Von Sternberg and Marlene produced a string of classic films, including Morocco, The Scarlet Empress, and Shanghai Express. But although they are regarded as extraordinary pieces of celluloid now, at the time the reception wasn't always so warm, and Marlene found herself labelled box office poison. She smashed that perception in 1939 by taking second billing in a James Stewart comedy western called Destry Rides Again. The film did wonders for her professionally, but caused her misery off-camera when the affair she began with Stewart reportedly resulted in a pregnancy. Marlene's close friend, Eric Maria Remarque, best known as the author of All Quiet on the Western Front, wrote in his diary that at Stewart's insistence, Marlene had an abortion because she blamed herself for getting pregnant. Another great sadness for Marlene was when she was forced to cut her ties with her homeland during the Second World War. A fervent anti-Nazi, Marlene became a US citizen in 1939, was one of the first stars to raise war bonds, and was an indefatigable entertainer to the Allied troops. When she returned to Germany 21 years later to perform, protesters shouted at her to go home, although others, including the mayor of Berlin, welcomed her back. After her death, aged 90 in Paris, her body was finally returned to Berlin, where, draped in the American Stars and Stripes, she was buried in Friedenau Cemetery, close to the house where she was born. John Travolta knows all about suffering for his art. For his recent role as Mrs. Turnblad in the musical remake of Hairspray, he had to sing and dance in a heavy fat suit.
It was a lot of work, 5 hours of makeup every day, throwing that very large body around and dancing. You know, I play this woman who's 300 pounds, and to jump and leap and, you know, and do things, it was fun, but hard work. You know, it was, but effective. It made everybody laugh.
Making everybody laugh when you're trying to be funny is a good thing. Having them crack up when you're not is disappointing, to say the least. That was the situation facing John after he reportedly poured millions of his own dollars into the big screen adaptation of Battlefield Earth, a saga of the year 3000, by Church Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. The sci-fi blockbuster was laughed off the screen by critics and audiences alike, making a clean sweep at the Razzie Awards and becoming one of the biggest box office disasters of all time. Still, John clung to his allegiance to the wacky church.
That's when I found Scientology, and I found the truth, and I found what works. And so for me, it's very important yearly to mark that celebration, almost like an anniversary. And there's a lot of people doing the same thing as I am, but each year it gets even more impressive, I think.
Over the past 2 years, his loyalty to the tenets of Scientology has been the cause of grumblings among the Hollywood community. The controversy centers around John's teenage son Jet, with whom he's rarely seen in public. He's been accused of failing to acknowledge that Jet has autism, due to his Scientology beliefs that anyone with psychological problems is a degraded being who has brought their afflictions on themselves. One particular Hollywood parent has urged John and his wife Kelly to seek proper treatment for the boy, instead of sticking their head in the sand and hiding him away from the public. John and Kelly's story is that Jet's condition has been ascribed the name Kawasaki disease, brought on by environmental toxins, specifically carpet cleaner.